Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be learning how to create a very simple composite shot or a composite design in Photoshop. This is a great way to learn how to use Photoshop, especially if you're new to it. And so we're just going to jump right into it. For this particular project, you're going to need to have three ingredients. You're going to need a landscape that's nice and high quality that's going to fill your background. You're going to need an object, person, object, thing, cartoon, whatever you want, and then you're going to need an effect like rain, rainbow, lasers, whatever, something to kind of go over to kind of bring it all together. Now, as you get into compositing, it ends up being a lot more advanced, but we're going to start with the most simple composite, and we're just going to allow this to teach us the basics of Photoshop. So first thing you're going to do is make a new file. Now, I always say create the work for where you're going to share it. So let's say you consume all of your art on Instagram. You're going to want to make your project the size for Instagram. So I'm just going to do a 2000 pixel grid in the art and illustration thing here. But let's say you know that you want to do it for print. Then you would want to make sure that it's an 8, like this is a standard sheet of paper, a letter size, and you would just want to make sure that you're making it to the correct size. But I'm going to keep mine in a grid. So the next thing I'm going to do is just press create. And now I've got my piece. Now I'm going to bring in my elements. So I'm going to drag this to the side because I've brought them over here, and I'm going to put them in the order that I want them to be. So I'm going to start with my background. So here's my background. It's thinking about it. All right, there we go. So here's my background, and I am going to size it. Now, one thing you want to make sure is never leave white space. That makes your picture look unfinished, and it just makes you look like a hack. Anyway, so you want to make sure that you have that space. So I'm going to bring this down so that I can see a lot of sky, because I want to see sky in my project. So there's that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the element that I'm going to put in. So I'm going to make it look like this elephant is ginormous and walking in the background of this, like walking behind the mountains here. So I'm going to say that's good. Now, this elephant is a little pixelated. I would probably, if I had more time to kind of like really search into it, I would probably fix this. I'm going to do some techniques to like clear him, make him look like he's just kind of foggy in the distance. So it doesn't matter as much, but you're going to want to make sure that you find something that kind of fits. So the last one I'm going to put in is actually going to be a smoke effect here. So I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to size that. I'm also going to flip it because I'm going to kind of make it look like it is like kind of rolling over the mountains. Now, as you can see, this one's already cut out. This is a PNG. I'm going to show you real fast before I get into anything else how to search for PNGs on the old interwebs. So first thing that you want to do is when you want to find something, you want to look it up and say smoke PNG. And what you're going to find is a lot of pictures with these boxes on them. Now, the trick is that you want to make sure that you find one that in its thumbnail is white background, but when it appears, it's going to have the checker mark. And when you drag it onto your desktop, you'll actually see, do you notice how there is no checker? It looks like just smoke, like it's a little ghost smoke running around here. That's how you know it is a true transparent PNG. Now, an example of one that is a fake one is this one. So it looks like it would work, but look at how when I move it, I can still see that checker. That is a lie. It is not a true PNG or not a true transparent PNG, and so you don't want to use that one. So that's how you find whether or not stuff is true PNG. In thumbnail, it shows up white, and when you bring it over here, the transition shows up. Although this one doesn't work either. So see, that's just white, but this one did. See how it is a checker, and when you drag it, it's see-through. All right, so moving back into here. Now I am going to go over, I'm going to show you a few things in Photoshop now. So this is your toolbar. This is where all of your main tools will be. And look at this little guy here, the little chip at the bottom. New Photoshop folks sometimes don't realize that each one of these little triangles mean that there are more tools. So one of my favorite tools to use is over here, but it's hiding in here. So magic wand tool is one of my favorite tools to use because it kind of gets nice big spaces, but I have to hold my mouse down on that selector tool and select it to change it to the magic wand tool. Another one that I'm just going to set right away is this one. This is actually where your paint bucket tool is. It's sitting behind gradient tool. So a few others that you should know is this is your eraser, and the shortcut key for that is E, and this is your brush, and the shortcut key for that is B. So the main ones you're going to be using are your like move tool, your marquee selection tool, and then your lasso and your wand tool. And then of course, brush, paintbrush, and all that stuff. So now the next thing you should know is up at the top. This is how you can change some of the things about each tool. And then this is also more adjustments. Now, the most important section is down here, the layers. So right now you see each one of my images are on their own layers. Now I am going to turn off the layer on this. Notice how when I turn the eye off, away goes the smoke. Now, if you export this, the smoke will be gone. It will not export with it. All the eyes have to be on in order for it to show up in the final product. So I'm going to go to this one. And right here, when you see this, this is marking it as a smart object, which means if I go to erase this, it's not going to let me. So to change that, I go like this and I go to rasterize layer. And now when I go to erase, I can now erase. Now I'm going to Control Z. By the way, Control Z is your best friend. Control Z is how you step back from one of your mistakes. So here I'm going to now show you some of the selector tools. So here is my magic wand tool. Notice how when I clicked on it, anything that was that way. Now it's color sensitive. So if I try to do this across like the grass here, notice how I have all these speckles. So it's not going to work in every situation. But if you have a big chunk of white space, all you have to do is click on that and it will take it away. Now, the next way to remove your background is my second favorite tool, which is the lasso tool. And that you just select around the area you want to delete and click delete. So that's the next part here. So this is where you're going to want to really spend your time. If you're like, oh man, this is going to take a while. Yeah, because it's digital art. Digital art, even though it does get kind of a rap for being easy or quicker or speedy, there's a lot of really fine tuning, like teeny weeny fiddly stuff that you got to do in order to make it look nice. I always go in and take my chunks out. So those are my biggest sections, and then I press delete. But then when I want to perfect it, I go to my eraser tool and I change my eraser tool to be a little bigger and I make it really soft. And then I'm going to unselect this section by clicking the marquee tool and clicking anywhere. By the way, if you have a teeny weeny section like this, zoop, you're not going to be able to see. You're not going to be able to do anything except for in that little section. So if you want to try and make it work, you just take the marquee tool, click anywhere, and it'll go away. All right, so I'm going to move this over and I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to take this slightly softer eraser and very carefully click on the side here. So as you can see, with that soft eraser, I'm able to get those edges. Now, something else that should be known is I'm going to make this elephant look like it's going behind here. So to do that, I can do the erasing in two ways. One way is just erase it, and the other way is by making a layer mask. So a layer mask is down here. It looks like a circle inside a square. Click on it, and then you take your brush, make it black, and make sure your brackets are around this white square right here. Don't make sure the brackets aren't on the picture because otherwise it'll just paint black. But black on the masking tool actually erases. So I'm gonna make this a lot bigger and I'm gonna take this and now it looks like I'm erasing, but notice how this little black spot here shows up. I'm not actually erasing. This is also a really great way to actually get rid of some of these fine tuner spots because I can actually then bring it back. So let's say I'm like, achoo, and I go too far. This is terrible acting. But either way, if I switch that to white, now I can bring back that section. Now I am using smoke to kind of make it look like to kind of clear up this area here so that I don't have to get too detailed with my erasing around the feet. But around his body, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm being way more careful. So here, I'm going to make this, I'm going to actually make it way smaller so I can get those details. I'm going to get closer And I'm going to erase. Oop, I need to make it softer than that. And now I can erase close to his body, taking my time and not rushing through this. If you rush through this, it's going to look terrible. Now, this is where the effect comes in. If you use effect that acts as like an overlay and kind of a cleanup thing, then you don't have to be as particular, but you want to make sure that you get this as clean as possible. All right. So that is pretty much all I'm going to do for it. Now, as you can see, he's really blurry. He's kind of in a rough spot. So what I'm going to do is go to back, make sure the brackets go back on my elephant, and I'm going to show you filters. So I'm going to go to the filter gallery and I'm going to go to camera raw filter. Now, camera raw filter is where you can do editing. It's essentially like a little bitty Photoshop or a Lightroom in your Photoshop. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the texture, bring up the clarity, but I'm going to go down to detail and I'm going to change noise reduction. What noise reduction does is look at how it's making him blurry. So he looks like he's a little bit more out of focus, but you can't see the pixels. I'm going to go back to basic again, and I'm going to bring down the texture a little bit and clarity. There we go. Press OK. Now look at how, even though he's still out of focus, he doesn't look as pixely. So he just kind of looks like maybe he's in the distance. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is look at how this is all almost kind of blue. As you get further away, things get bluer. It's called aerial perspective. And so I'm going to change that about him too. And I'm going to change that by going into image adjustments. Now the reason why I use camera filter adjustments to do other things, but adjustments here is because camera filter raw, you don't see what's behind him. You can only see the picture. But in this one, I can actually change my color balance and hue and saturation just by looking at it, and I can just change it here. So I'm going to change him to be more blue. And then I'm going to go to brightness and contrast. And I'm going to make him a little brighter. I'm going to bring the contrast up a little bit. And I am going to go to curves and I'm going to crush the blacks a little bit. That's bringing up the gray point. So I want to kind of make him really light and almost like foggy in the distance. So I'm going to play with that a little bit more. But for right now, I think that I'm kind of happy with where that is. So now I'm going to take this guy and I'm going over to here. So I've now turned the eye back on, and this is the PNG. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to transform it. So free transform is in edit, I believe. Yes. I always lose it. Where is it? Free transform. Control T is what I always use to free transform. So sometimes when I'm trying to find where it's actually located, there it is. It is in edit. I just was missing it. Control T, or in Command T if you're using a Mac. Control T, and then I can move it and change it. Now, if I hold Shift, I can stretch it out a little bit. And I'm going to bring this here and I'm press Enter. Now, I like it, but it's not right. Something's wrong with it. It's like too opaque. So I am going to go to opacity and I'm going to just using my mouse drag down the opacity and bring it up a little bit. And then I'm going to use the eraser again, nice and large, rasterize it so I can erase it. And I'm going to just kind of erase a little bit of this smoke. I can erase a little bit of the edge too, because I don't like the way that that looks. Oops, Control Z. And so I can kind of make it look like he's kind of coming out from the clouds below this, just like that. So I still have a little bit of touching up to do around my elephant. I can also go into filters. So if I go to adjustments over here above this, I get this adjustment gallery that will act as overlaying filters. So if I go into hue and saturation and I bring this blue, I can actually change all of its. Notice how it all changes? I can change everything using a layer. Now, if I don't like it, I just turn off the layer and it goes back to normal. So I'm going to go over to here and I'm actually going to go to, let's see what it looks like in black and white. It doesn't look good in black and white. The biggest thing is when I have more time, I would get that section right here. Notice how that is got a white spot. That's really distracting. And so I'm going to want to change that. The other thing is I'm curious if I turn down the opacity of this, I kind of get a ghost elephant, which I kind of like. I'm going to leave it at like 76 opacity. I like that. So I'm going to go into adjustments one more time here. I'm going to go into brightness and contrast, and I'm going to bring it a little bit darker, a little bit brighter, a little bit more contrasted. And I'm going to futz around with it to kind of get it to the level that I like so that it kind of looks like it all fits together. And once I'm happy with that, I've got my three things together. I make them look like they match together. I've gotten my colors. I've maybe adjusted using my adjustments. I've erased things. Now I'm going to export it. Doing a critique on my own thing here, what I would definitely do if I had more time would be I would spend more time making sure this fog fits. I would spend more time around the outside edge. I would do a little bit more fine tuning so he fits into the picture better. But because I don't want to waste your whole day, I'm going to just show you how to export this. So we're going to go to export, and you are going to go to export, and we're going to go export as. Now, you can export in two ways. You can export as a PNG or a JPEG. Either one works for me. Either one is pretty universally understandable. And then I am going to go export, and I'm going to give it a name. Always name your work. I always send mine to my desktop so I can find it. I'm going to call him Ellie, and that's it. And then I'm going to save, and then it goes to my desktop. So that is a crash course into the basic tools of Photoshop. I hope that you found this helpful, and happy editing.